Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today, I have Dominic on the show, and we're going to talk about supporting folks who are living with the mental illness. Get you a drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Good morning, Dominic, man. How are you doing this morning?
I'm blessed. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. I know, man, your wife been kind of talking about it for a while, and she had given me your number. I lost it. Then I think she giving it to me again. I think I lost it again. I'm so busy, and I'm like, you know what? Let me make sure. So I had text her one day at work, and I'm like, okay, um, text me his number, and then so she finally texted. And let me tell you another thing, and this is a true story. So I went in so when I reached out to you, before I reached out to you, I looked at my work phone, like, okay, I can't find the text, because I'm like, I can't go back to her and be like, give me his number, because I really want to, get the show did.
Right.
And so finally I went and looked on the email, make sure I had her work number right. And I'm like, okay, there we go. I ain't got to access. So
That's awesome.
but that's just my life is kind of like, a whirlwind sometimes. But
Yes.
well, why don't we start, Dominic, about we could start with you just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dominic Feliciano. I'm a family
Mhm.
support specialist for out in Placer County. I'm contracted through Rami though. But I'm a father of five. And so we have three boys, two girls. Our oldest is 23, and then we go 21, two 19-year-old girls, and then a 17-year-old boy. And yeah, and so we live out here in Yuba City, and two of our kids have gone through, was diagnosed with mental illness, one at the age of 16, and the other one at the age of 18 at the time. And yeah, and so we got to play an active role in their recovery with mental illness for one who was underage, and then transition 6 months later to our son who was 18 and play a supportive role. And those are two very different roles on that we play. But I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do that, because I'm a man of faith, and so the good Lord takes whatever you're going through and turns it into a triumph, for others. And so I'm very I'm very blessed that I had the opportunity to do that, because now I'm turning that into a victory. I get to share that knowledge now with other people who are going through that, who are parents or loved ones who support, someone who suffers with mental illness or substance abuse, and how that looks to actually support them in a healthy manner. I think a lot of times us parents just kind of take that. And so yeah, and it's kind of a different story because there is a stigma about that, mental illness, big stigma about that. And so just making people aware. That's why this show is so important, to get the word out on that, to make people understand, that it's a common thing. Your brain is a muscle, and if my back was sore or aching, I would put Flexol on it. And so we have to just,
Yeah,
as a medication. And so as a society, we just kind of need to like understand that that's a muscle, and that can just be injured through traumatic stress and trauma too. And so we'll have to, support every person on getting that, either fit, rebuilt, or actually get into a place where it's no longer injured, hopefully in the future.
that's awesome. That is so. Well, first of all, you don't look like you have the kids that you say you have. In other words, you look younger than what you're saying through your the age of your kids. So that's
Yeah.
first of all. So you're definitely blessed. You're aging very gracefully, which is a good thing. I probably would have gave you maybe about 29, something like
Okay.
that. So
I'm
that's a
a
good thing.
that's great. I'm about a decade older.
That's a blessing, man. You whatever you're doing, keep doing, man. So good. You know, one of the things that I like about you, when I first met you, when you were first, hired on, literally my first train of thought about you was this is a very intelligent individual. That was my first thought of you. And I saw you come in the office and I think you was talking either with Vanessa or Mal, somebody, and I'm just like, okay, this brother looks, seemed like he's very intelligent. And then when I finally had a chance to talk with you a little bit yesterday, and I'm like, okay, this is what I sensed about him. You know, I
Yeah.
love the fact that you seem to be very passionate and very outspoken about mental health and your experience with mental health, regardless it's to work, family, or friends. What has given you that passion to be outspoken about mental health and supporting people with mental health?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that applied knowledge is power. Some people use the term knowledge is power, but if you don't apply it, then the knowledge is useless. So applied knowledge is power, and so just making not only myself and my wife and our family, aware of this mental illness, but also too, what are some of those things to fight through that, because it is a stigma in society. Mental illness has come a long way, but it still has a long ways to go.
Right.
I had, for me, I work in the Placer County office, and so I get to work in the substance side, and I get to work in the mental health side. And what
Oh,
I've come to know is that when it's substance abuse, there's more people acclimated to attending to recover from that, because they could feel, oh, I took something, and so I need to heal from that.
mhm.
But mental illness, it's a stigma. It's people thinking that they're crazy or something like that, and most
Right.
people don't want to don't want to like not admit that, but just like be aware that something is aware and something is off, and so people tend to steer away from that. And
Right.
it's not culturally, in some places, not culturally accepted too. And
Yes.
so that's a big area on that. So I'm very passionate about this, because it is something that took a part of our life, and it really changed. When someone suffers from mental illness, it doesn't affect just that person, it affects everyone around that person, every
Hmm.
single person around that person. And so creating that healthiness, creating that support, creating that love, learning about the illness, and then being able to use healthy coping mechanisms. Like one of the ones that I like the most is the leap method. And yeah, and just so understanding that, and just kind of making that aware, and can be able to share that with others on that. So we do a lot of outreach, just to make sure that we know that the Placer County community knows, about that, what the resources are, and how to support a loved one who goes and suffers through mental illness in all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Dominic. Earlier you kind of talked about, some family members, some of your children
Yeah,
suffer mental illness. Are you comfortable? Because I want to know a little bit about that and how
yeah.
you're able to support them with the knowledge and the skill set that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I am comfortable with that. So I love sharing my story with other people, because, one of the things that it does is it brings connectivity to somebody. Your struggle um, kind of normalates something for somebody else if they're going through that same struggle,
Right.
and it kind of goes, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this, or I'm not the only one that's feeling this, or I'm not the only one that's on this journey alone. And so by sharing my story, by being able to articulate this in a manner that can be comprehensive to that, it could share that in a powerful way on that. So yeah, I'm absolutely open to it, because one of the things I know is when we talk about it more, we don't give it power
Right.
anymore. It doesn't have a power over our life anymore. And so we're able to talk about that, and then that gets released, because then we focus on the solution and not the problem.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So when you first became aware that one of your children, had something, different than what you expected to be, when you felt like,
Yeah.
or realized that they had something going on mentally, how did it affect you? And what did you do as you start to learn about what was going on with them?
Yeah. So initially, I think a lot of times, so let me kind of just backtrack a little bit. There, in my between me and my wife Jessica, there was no signs of mental illness history in
Right.
our family. So nothing on my side, nothing on my wife's side. So initially, when our daughter in 2019 kind of started that,
Yeah.
or not, I'm sorry, not 2023 started that. Um, that was a hard thing. I think as a parent, we take that on as ourselves.
Right.
And the first thing we do is we start self reflecting on this stuff. Was I
Yeah.
there enough? Did I support them enough? This is my fault because because of mental illness. I think a lot of parents have a reflection on their parenting skills or their
Mhm.
parenting style or anything like that. And so you know for a minute there, I'd say for at least 30 days to maybe a month to 2 months, there was a lot of just self-reflecting on that and just a lot of guilt and
Right.
shame, um, because you start looking back at all the things where you could have been, and you started looking at, we are our hardest critics. And
Right.
so we start looking at those things and just realizing, man, self-reflecting and almost self-damaging ourselves. But once we kind of got over that hump, it was like, okay, how do we support her? How do we fix this? Is this fixable? Then we came to the solution of what we do. And so we started researching this. We started talking to people, we
Yeah.
started trying to get aware of this, and come to find out, our daughter was 17 when that kind of started. And it's in that age group from the age of 16 to 19. It's the highest percentage in that
Yeah.
group that suffers through any kind of trauma or triggers. And during that time, in 2022 and 23, we were still in the COVID time. She was still graduating, still like at home on the screen, not attending school. And let me say this too, which is kind of funny. We have 5 children. The two that suffer from mental illness were kind of extroverts.
Yeah.
I mean, introvert. They were trying to introverts. The other three were extroverts. So, they're the ones who like it. They won't say something unless they say something first to them, and we're
Yeah.
working on that and building that. And so attending school kind of stretches them out. It lets them become, I call it a professional extrovert, meaning that you're an introvert by heart, but you're a professional extrovert, meaning you're working on becoming an extrovert. So it stretches you, attending school, getting up, things like that. So when you take that all the way to an introvert, there's nothing left. And then so
Yeah.
it just goes into depression, it goes into anxiety, it goes into not stretching yourself, it gets into your comfort zone. And then, as a society, we they stayed at home attending school and things like that. And she started like not getting out of bed, not showering, going a few days without showering, and then just depression just kind of went down, down, down until it triggered into a psychosis. And so
Yeah.
she was diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, and then it was the lack of sleep, the lack of motivation, and it didn't just kind of spiral down. And I always like to tell some family members, I say, the harshest the harshest thing that we can give a human being is solitary confinement. When you see that, and we, maybe there wasn't prison walls and things, window sales and things like that, but we did that with our kids, our children, and
Mhm.
staying home and things like that. My kids went weeks without being outside, and we were working 40 hours, 50 hours a week,
Right.
and didn't even see that happen.
Right.
Didn't even contest that because they were all high school students, pretty self-sufficient. They all had vehicles, but it was just something that just happened through that shift during COVID.
Yeah. And that is so true. Dominic, I have a family member. I'm going to speak to what you when you talk about isolation, because I have a family
Yeah.
member that also likes to isolate himself sometimes. And I notice whenever that happens, maybe a day or two later, I can see like the depression start um,
Absolutely.
you know, rearing his head. And,
Hmm.
I could just tell that his mood changes. He's very quiet,
Yeah.
have a sad look on his face. And then
Yeah.
I'm asking, I say, hey, how's everything going? It's going okay. But I could tell then, so a few days later, he'll come out and just tell me that, look, I'm depressed, and kind of give me the reasons why. And then that's when I have to get up in there and do the work. Now
Right.
I'm able to identify that, because his natural personality, he's outgoing, he
Right.
likes to talk, but when I see him get quiet or, go in a room and stuff like that, I'm very aware now. And so
Right.
I go up in there and I kind of have this conversation and just be a support system and walk him through whatever it is that is causing the depression. um
Right.
and so it's important for us, it's important for people who are providing that support to folks who are experiencing mental health crisis, to be able to identify and have the tools to go in there and
Yeah.
really support them in the way that they need to be supported.
Absolutely.
you know
Absolutely.
I also have a nephew, and and I'm very transparent when I do these shows. I have a nephew, my older sister's son, who also have some, serious, mental challenges.
Right.
And when he was born, um, my sister was well, he was in the hospital for a extended period of time,
Right.
years before he got home. And
Right.
so when he got home, she was now forced to take care of her son.
Right.
And that really kind of helped her to learn more about his diagnoses, because he had a trach in his throat. It was, she had to put in
Yeah.
some work. And
Yes.
so she had to adapt, her lifestyle and really support her son, which I'm glad that she was able to do that, because now he's doing extremely well, extremely, extremely,
That's awesome.
extremely, extremely well. He's in, special needs programs, Special Olympics. I mean, anything that the
Yes.
boy can get himself involved in, he wants to do it,
That's
because he
amazing.
realized that he has peers that,
Right.
understand him. And so that's his crowd. That's
Yes.
so he get his strength from,
Yes.
and so I'm glad that it's people like us, or we have family members that know how to support people who need our support, in the time of need. So
Yes. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that, I always say that it takes a village to raise a child, and it doesn't matter whether that child is 16 or 34, that will always be your child. So I
yeah,
definitely understand that in every which way possible.
absolutely, absolutely. So why do you think there is so much stigma surrounding mental health? Do you think it's a
Yeah,
lack
that's,
of education? Do you think it's fear? Like, why do you think it's so much stigma surrounding mental health?
I think a lot of time, you know, there's a lot of fear that exists for mental health. I think one is its culture.
Yeah,
uh, a lot of different cultures don't understand mental health in its essence, and and when someone does have it, because um, because it's not seen, it's shameful.
right.
It's something, it's taboo. We don't really want to talk about it. They like to put labels on it. Oh, that person's just crazy, and then it makes that person, they isolate. People tend
Yeah.
to pull away from that person. Another thing is the lack of education.
Mhm.
I think mental illness has come a long way, but we still got a long ways to go,
Yeah.
as far as that. um, and we've come to realize in the last 10 years, that there's two models. There's the medical model, and which is, going to a clinician, seeking
Mhm.
that. But there is another model that's much included, and it's the recovery model. And that is a
Mhm.
peer, that is an advocate, that is someone who has gone through the fire, has gone through the steps. Those two need to coexist, I believe, in order
Wow.
for us to achieve that. And for the long time, there was only the medical model. And
Right.
there was only the medical model around, which you go to a clinician, you take this pill and be
Right.
done with that. And
Right.
there was no recovery to that. And just now in the last 10 years, they're saying, oh, wow, the recovery model is actually going to help this person because this person has walked through that, on that. And this is a success story. So let's take this person who was successful in walking through this, and now let's put them coincide with the medical model. And so now we have the medical model and the recovery model helping somebody achieve their goal on that. And so that's really what has transpired in the last 10 years on that. And I only see it growing now to a form as we see that. I didn't really understand the depths of that until your own child goes through it, until you have your own experience that go through that. You know, I see now that, when your family members and your loved ones go through it, you have more compassion for the people that are homeless. You have more compassion for the
Mhm.
people on the streets. Now exactly what they're going through. You have empathy for them, as something that I think as a society, it was really hard to be around, because we put labels like
Mhm.
crazy, insane, or things like that to distance ourselves and isolate that those people, and I don't mean that like those people, but I mean the
Mhm.
people that suffer from mental illness.
Mhm.
So I think that's the biggest stigma that goes on for them, and it's just basically just making people aware, and then just having the knowledge. Having the knowledge, I think we're decades behind us. I teach an intentional parenting class on Thursdays at 10 at the Wellness Center in Roseville, and it's making people aware of that, because I think I grew up. My dad was ex-military, and so my dad was a single parent. So my dad was very rigid about things. Very rigid. By the time I was 10 or 12, I knew how to tie a tie. I knew how
Wow.
to iron a press and slacks, and just things like that. But when it came to like raising us, it was very strict, with not as much love, in
Right.
that area. So I think a lot of times that comes out in most older generations
Yeah.
on that, especially if people suffer through mental illness, and so we have to like learn to learn new healthy coping mechanisms as a parent, learn new healthy skill sets as a parent, grow and develop, because there's no book that is like, here, this is a parenting book, and then, you know what I mean, there's, once you have your child. So we learn through these struggles, we learn through these things, and we grow powerful in that too. So I think it's just a little bit of everything, of making aware of everyone, with culture, education, and also being aware of like the recovery model versus the medical model, and helping support
I think you just said a whole lot, like just which is really, 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 really good information. I do agree with the fact that we do need the recovery model because, like you said, there was a time where they see somebody feel has a mental health breakdown going on. Okay, let's give them a pill. That's going to fix everything. When in fact, it didn't always fix the problem. You
right.
know, and so when the recovery model came in, I feel like that complemented the medical side of things. Even today, you
Right.
get people who will say, "No, this medication isn't working for me," or "This medication has it's causing me to have side effects."
Yeah.
That isn't working for me, and some people will just stop taking it and then
Right.
start journaling or start going to a support group or something like that that they feel is more appropriate for their particular situation. So I definitely agree with you on that. Something you kind of talked about doing like the parenting class. Oh
Yeah.
man, like do you couple that with mental health or just strictly parenting?
So I do that with a little bit of both. It depends on
Okay,
the field. I'm a family support specialist. So I kind of read the crowd on that. So
right,
if we do it once a week, and so if the crowd is all parents who are just attending, don't have any children with mental
right.
health or anything like that, then I cater more to like learning new healthy coping mechanisms. Like,
Um,
what's it look like a 24/7 role model, or what's it look like to have strong beliefs, or words of affirmation, or serious fun, and I
yeah,
know that it's like serious fun. We have to talk about serious fun. And yes, we do, because children need to be at play on that too.
yeah,
Young adults. We need to instill that with them too. We live in a society where a lot of people,
yeah,
they're always on digital devices, and
yeah,
they need that youthfulness. So yeah, so we teach all types of topics on that. If it pertains to something that is more mental health, then I'll gear it towards that. So I pretty much read the crowd and
yeah,
see, and as we kind of talk a little bit about our backgrounds and stuff, like I could read the crowd, and then we do have a curriculum, a 10-week curriculum on that, but I kind of tailor make it to the week on that too. So we'll still stay on that week topic, but I can kind of shift it around. If it's more supporting mental health, if it's not supporting mental health, if it's just learning to just new skills as a parent, then we'll train on that and learning new skills as a parent. And one of the great things about myself, is that my wife is we've had children very young, so we've made a lot of mistakes,
Yeah,
and so we've learned from those lot of mistakes.
yeah,
My wife and I, we were right out of high school having kids. My wife was 9 months pregnant, walking down her senior year of high school. So like
yeah,
so right out of high school, we were having children. So we were kids having kids. So
yeah,
we learned quite a few things, along the way on that helped us, and like I said, it takes a village. So we've learned from others too. So this has been an opportunity to give back on that and to help people. And so, yeah. And so that parenting class is just great to just be more well-rounded. And whether you have children or not, it doesn't matter. These are just great skills to learn for maybe a niece, maybe a
yeah,
nephew,
yeah,
maybe for one another,
yeah.
so you can move forward and be successful. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I love about you and your wife, I love the fact that you guys are using your experience, life experience, whatever experience it is, to give back to the community because that's so important. Sometimes growing up, we make mistakes or we make not the best choices for ourselves, whether
Right.
it's spending all our money on a car that we know we can't afford, or, going shopping for some things, whatever it may be,
Right.
as you get older, you learn from your experience, which actually give you access to wisdom, you know.
Right.
So I love drawing off my experience because I definitely has made a lot of mistakes growing up. But I do like to share my personal experience. I'm very transparent with, things that going on in my family or has went on in my family that made me the man that I am today and things like that. And I think that, culturally being African American, I will say that it is very, 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 very challenging for some of people in certain cultures. I'm speaking for Black folks in particular, to be able
Hmm.
to accept when there are differences like mental
Absolutely.
illness and things like that in the family. They tend to sweep that stuff under the rug. I have a younger brother, I'm a sister, cousins, who all suffer from mental illness. And unfortunately, they didn't really get the help that they needed growing up because of the stigma. And I remember talking to my mother, specifically, I remember talking to my mother about it. And my mother' response was, well, I was worried about what the family was going to think. I worried about the friends going to think. And so, because of that, you allowed your children to not get the resources and support they need. As a result, unfortunately, their life, for lack of a better term, is a hot mess right now. You
Absolutely.
know, and so I'm glad that this generation or this day and time, people are more receptive. And we're not there yet, though. We're not.
Right.
But it seems like, our generation, and the generation on us, it just seems like they're more open now because
Right.
there's more mental health issues going on, especially when it comes to social media. You know that,
Absolutely.
and so I feel like the youth are a little bit more open to it opposed to our parents' generation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just speaking on that, one of the things that my wife and I, as we were aware of, not only our daughter with mental illness, but then our son 6 months later on that, we totally changed it. We totally we didn't run in fear on that. We accepted it and we exposed it. One
Right.
of the things that we did is we started transitioning our house differently. Our household started differently. So I switched my career path,
Wow.
and the reason why I did is because I was working for Brinks as a armored guard truck, and I was working 80 hours a week. And
Wow.
yes, that
Wow.
is correct. That is correct. 80 hours a week. And so we weren't here a lot of times. And so I switched jobs to work a 40-hour a week job. So I took a huge pay cut on that.
Yeah.
But my kids were more important, and
Wow.
their health to that on that. And
Man.
so being made aware of that, the next thing that we ended up doing is we ended up having family meetings once a week.
Wow.
Family meetings where we touch base. We had teenager kids. We had three at the time that were not in high school. We had I'm sorry, we had two at the time that were not in high school, three at the time that were still in high school, 2 were on their senior year on that, and so we transitioned that. So everyone had jobs, everyone was going
Wow.
which way, that way, this way, and so we said, "No, we're gonna make family time," and so we
Wow.
started, implementing a weekly family. We started doing it Sunday evenings, and we started, so we would go around the room and we would do words of affirmation, where you had to somebody had to do something nice for you during the week, and then you got to praise them for that.
Right.
So like, let's say my son Gabriel, his day was to take the trash out. If I would take out the trash for him one of his days on
Yeah.
that, and then he would compliment me during the week on that. But what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to be intentional about others, and
Right.
helping others, instead of like always just consuming ourselves, always about us, always about us, always about us. And so words of affirmation is just great to hear that you did something. When somebody compliments you, it does something to you on the inside.
Yeah.
It goes, wow, it makes you feel alive. And so we started with just words of affirmation. So we would go around the room and we would say, hey, Marissa, I love you because this week, at Jamba Juice, you came home and you brought me a smoothie, and I just want to let you know I appreciated that. Gabriel, like, I got locked out of the house, and you drove all the way from where you were at to come
Yeah.
unlock the door. I appreciate that. Just little things, or whether it was chores or something like that. Dad, thanks for taking out the trash can on my week. Like, I appreciate that. Mom, thanks for
Yeah.
walking the dogs on my week. I appreciate that. It was just little things that we started doing for each other, because then now we started being super intentional about helping one another.
Right.
It wasn't just we took eyes off of just ourselves and put it onto others. And that's a huge difference in life. When you start taking eyes off yourself and putting it onto others,
Yeah.
whoo, great things start happening,
Yeah.
confidence starts building, you know.
Yeah.
So we would do words of affirmation as we go around the room. And then we would talk about our week. And let me tell you, as a parent, we have to be transparent with our kids. Like,
Yes.
I know, like, not to the extent to trigger them, but to
Yeah.
the extent to let them know that parents go through struggles too.
Right.
Like, I know that a lot of times, us, we want to make sure we put the smiley face and everything's going great and stuff like that. But if kids never see that parent struggle, then they tend to be recluse and not tell you about their struggle.
Right.
And so we had to open up about that and say, so we would talk about our week, we would talk about the highs of our week, we talk about the lows of our week, and then we would rate our week, you know. And like, I would say, hey, like, one week I'd be like, hey, it was a great week, I got kudos from Sydney, and I got kudos from Lorna, who's one of a supervisor in Placer County. I had a great week. We had like 5 people at the parenting class. Like, everything worked out great. I got to serve at my church. I got to speak at the daily devotional that we have. Like, that was a great week. I give my week an 8 out of 10. You
Yeah.
know, or there'd be weeks, like there was a month like where my mother passed away in November, and I was like, "Hey kids, I just want to let you know, like, I'm struggling. Like,
Yeah.
if I've seemed distant, I'm sorry. It's not towards you. It's not towards the
Yeah.
situation. This is where I'm going at. Like, and I'm having a hard time coping with this, but I'm getting better with it. This week, I'm at a 2 out of 10 right now. This week,
Yeah.
but it was weekly on that, and we were consistent on that, so we could show the highs, we could show the lows,
Mhm.
but also too, we could communicate that. So then when they saw you go through that, they were like, oh, okay, there must be something wrong. And
Right.
versus that too, so then we could understand too what they were going through. And so I think a
Wow.
lot of times we just kind of keep it surface level, but we got to go deep sometimes. We have to go deep, we have to model what we want to see, and so that was a big thing, just changing that parenting. I mean, changing that weekly meeting for families was, for our family, was really, really big for us.
Yeah.
And then we just started implementing healthy coping mechanisms. We
Yeah.
ended up having an app. We have an app on our phone. It's called Cozy. And we all plug in everything that we got going on, so we stay connected as a family, because everyone's got therapy, they've got tape program, they got all kinds
Yeah.
of things going on. And so this is how we stay supported on that. And so we know who's coming, who's going, who's,
Mhm.
like that. And so as long as you live under this roof,
That's
like,
right.
we'll stay connected on that. And so once you move on, then you could be deleted from the app, and,
Yeah.
and move on, because you're self-sufficient, you're doing your own thing. So our oldest son, he doesn't live with us anymore, so he's
Mm.
not on the app, but the rest of our kids are, and so that's how we just stay connected on that. And we have everything from like working out at the gym,
Yeah.
to therapy sessions, to an interview, church praise dance team. Like we have everything on there, you know. So our kids know where we're at and where we're doing on that, and we know where they're at, what they're up to, you know, on that. And that's how we stay connected on that. That's how we stay like a united front.
That accountability is
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
when it comes to family structure and raising kids. And and I love the fact that you said as long as you're under this roof, because that's important. I mean, you know how these kids are today. It's funny, but I'm gonna get off a little bit, venture off. I was watching this
yeah,
podcast, and I'm just gonna not go too many details, but it was about I think the daughter, she was like 22 or 23. She was living in the mom house, and the mom set, the expectation in her house. Like, this is what goes on. These are gonna be rules in my house. And so the daughter got online, she got the venting, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. My mom's tripping it and blah blah blah. And her mom got made a video and was saying, in my house, she's welcome to leave, she's welcome to, get her own place and all that, but she's in my house. And that
right.
remind me of, you just kind of threw it out there a little bit, but it's true. We love support, but we also want to have the family of, meaning the kids that are adults in our house, to let them know we love with support, but this is what we do here. This is how it's going to be here until you move on. But Dominic, how important is it to have a two-parent home when you are supporting children who have a mental diagnosis, opposed to just having
And
one?
yeah, I think a lot of times too, it's very crucial because there is things that my wife can do as a woman of the house that I cannot do.
Yes,
These,
yes,
and there's things that that the man of the house can do that my wife can't do, and so those
yes,
are very important. Those are actually building blocks to help structure the kids. And
yeah,
I'm not saying that a single parent. I was both my wife and myself were raised with a single parent.
yeah,
My wife's dad stepped out of her life when she was 7. My mom stepped out of my life when I was 2. So
yeah,
we've been in a broken home and raised on that. And I could tell you from our lived experience, that's probably one of the reasons why we had children so young, because
yeah.
we were seeking attention,
Mhm.
from the opposite sex,
Right,
obviously, in that, because there was a lack of in the house.
right.
And so that took a lot of um that takes a lot out of a child on that. So having both of those structures, and if you're in a place right now where you don't have that support, where you're like, I'm just a single parent, then I recommend always finding a role model like your uncle that is going
Right.
to be step in, or because it does take, they have to look up to someone. There's moms can raise sons, but it takes them, a man to show a son what a man looks like,
That's
and
right.
those things.
That's right.
And vice versa. It takes
Mhm.
a wife to show a daughter what a woman
That's
looks
right.
like, a woman of strength looks like, a woman of
Mhm.
faith looks like. Those are things that are very crucial in a life. And so I know that is paramount to a child's success on that. And so we have always done our best to um to be a united front. And and as we had multiple kids, and we're 5, they like to test, they like to test as they
Of
grow up and
course.
stuff. So
Yeah.
the biggest thing was to be my wife and I to be on the same page, the
Yeah.
same page. And I think as a parent, one of the things, and this might be a little controversial, but I'm gonna say it because I believe in this in our household, is that our relationship comes before kids, comes before the kids, because my wife is going to be in my life for the rest of my life. That's my soulmate. My daughter. We had this question. My daughter asked me when she was like 11 or 12 years old. She said, "Daddy, do you love me?" And I was like, "Of course, baby, I love you." And then she said, "Do you love me like mom?" And I said, "That's a different type of love." And she
Right.
was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said it jokingly, but I said, you see this chandelier right here in the living room. And she was like, "Yeah." I said, "Mom's the chandelier. do you see the light bulbs on the chandelier? I said, that's you, baby. I said, when you turn 18, I'm gonna unscrew you and send you packing somewhere else when you
Right.
no,
Right.
but it's jokingly. But I said, mom's gonna always be there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm gonna love you there. But your goal is to raise you, build you up, and then you start your own family,
Right.
and you start tending to your husband that's gonna be there. And I think a lot of times in society, we pick our children over our spouses, and
Yes.
then we raise them. We're in every event, we're in every little single thing that
Uh-huh.
they do and stuff like that. And then when they leave, we don't even know our spouses. We don't even
Right.
know our spouses. We spent so many years involved in all their sports, all their activities, everything like that. And then we're too distant, we're two ships, casting away by the time the children leave. And that's a lot of divorces happen like that kind of stuff right after the children leave. And so we knew that early on that we wanted to be a united front. And so our marriage came right before. Doesn't mean that we didn't love our children. It was just that's the way we structured it. We structured it God, then our marriage, then our children, and
And
then everything else, work and everything else goes after that.
and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. The Bible tells us that the husband loved your wife as Christ loved the church, and it also
Right.
teaches that the Christ is the man of the man, and the man is
Absolutely.
the head of the wife. And you're absolutely right. And it's funny you brought this up because this is something that I have taught my sister. My sister's married. When I tell you she loves her kids, almost to a point of idolatry, and my sister's not saved, but I'm sowing those seeds, right? And
Right.
my family don't care for her husband at all. They don't like her
Right.
husband or whatever. But because I'm biblically sound through the Holy Spirit, I teach my sister what's right, you know,
Hmm.
and so I do get a lot of backlash because they don't really understand biblical truth. And so when I
Right.
have to tell my sister, and I told her, I said, Regina, your husband comes before your kids. This is biblical. This is the way God designed it. That's hands down,
Right.
period. And
Right.
at first she didn't understand it, and I mean, because when I tell you this girl is very close to her children, and it took a while, some years for her to get that. So now when she started to make this transition in her mind, which eventually transferred to her actions, now it's a problem. Because
Yeah.
now her kids are saying, my niece and nephew is saying, "Oh, you put dad before us," and "Oh, this, and that." So now I'm trying to have a conversation with them. They for some reason society has got this thing backwards.
Yeah.
But for those of us who know biblical truth,
Right.
understand why it has to be like that. Because you gave a perfect example with the
Right.
chandelier and with the light bulb, and you're right. A lot of times people spend so much time focused on the kids, their marriage suffer, their spouse suffer, they're not no longer meeting the spouse needs, and the spouse who's actually going towards the kids, which is not wrong with that, but you have to make sure that this relationship is solid.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I'm glad just because not a lot of people think like that.
Right. I've always said that I will never let an adolescent make a decision for our marriage.
Yeah,
And as they grow up on that, we can't let children who don't have developed minds
yeah,
yet and have the spiritual maturity, the emotional intelligence, make a
yeah,
decision in our household for anything. You
yeah.
know, all the way down to if we should get a dog or not. Just
Right.
because your 7-year-old wants a dog, you know, you got to understand your household. You got to understand how your household functions, things of that nature. And if it's not conducive for it, don't allow an adolescent to make a decision in your household on that. That's just our belief on that. And so we've guided by that, and through those things, we've been a united, strong front for that, where our children do love and appreciate us. So
That's awesome. But you are teaching them when they get their own families as well. That's what you're doing.
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
it's I can hear through your the information that you give. And I could definitely hear that God, I'm gonna say Jesus, is a
Mhm.
huge component in the successes that has came about in your life, whether it's marriage, kids, career. Like, let's talk a little bit about what role he played in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. He played a huge role in our life, you know. Um, when we got saved, we gave our life to Christ. We knew that we were going to inline ourselves and do everything uh that we possibly can to be obedient on that. Before that, we spent 38 years, you know, um in the world. And
Right.
so I said the least I could do is spend the next 38 years serving him. And
Yeah.
so, I think a lot of times people go a long time without serving and then they go 3 years serving. And they're like, oh, this Jesus thing doesn't work. And then they go back to the world and it's like, wait a minute, you were not saved for a long time. And then
Right.
how is it you're going to compare 38 years to not being saved to 3 years being saved and wonder why it's not working? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have to give the same amount of effort you did in the other side to the same side, and so that took a lot of it took a lot of intentionality to know our Bible, to have biblical truth to a lot of things, but to also to impart and take and put application to our life on that. But not only that, our faith side, we have to be well rounded, also too in knowledge and stuff. I'm very intentional about reading things. I'm
Yeah.
very intentional about my mindset. I'm very intentional about growth because I believe that's what keeps me young, that
Yeah.
keeps me agile, that keeps me. And I come to realize the more you know, the more you don't know.
Right. Right.
The smarter you get, the more you don't know. So I seek to understand as you get older, you ask more questions than you answer, on that because you're always learning. So I just finished a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Currently, I'm reading right now Limitless by Jim Wick. And so these are just things that I always, I take to, Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Myers. There's a lot of books that I constantly, I mean, if you scroll through my phone and stuff like that, I'm constantly reading books. And when I get done, and this is coming from a kid who I have a high school education, but I never went to college or anything like that because books weren't my thing. But as I got biblically sound on that, I said, you know what, my pastor's always letting us know that we have to always develop ourselves. We always have to
Mhm.
develop ourselves. We always have to learn and educate ourselves. And I'm all for education, but the only thing I am in is the type of education.
Right.
I like to educate myself on things that I can apply right now in my life. That's
Right.
going to be constant, and so it's always, and I know that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so building those relationships and how to understand people. So like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Like those are things that I read and study on. I read that book like once a year just to be a refresher because, if you're going to be successful, you got to love people. You just
Right.
have to love people,
Right.
you have to. And so
Yeah.
we all have to equip ourselves in loving people. And that's, and that's being knowledgeable on that, not only faith wise, spiritually, but also too, just like learning those new techniques, learning how to articulate, learning how to smile, learning how to
Yeah.
shake a hand. Good morning, being the first one to say good morning to someone, learning how to joke with someone, like
Yeah.
learning those things to put people's rest at down because we live in a life where technology has gone such a long way that we're in comparison with each other
Yeah.
all day, every day. And we're our worst critics. Our
Right.
brains, I was telling my daughter, because I'm reading this book called Limitless, and I said, our brains is so crazy. Before we ever read or went to school, we learned how to talk. We spoke a language. We
Mhm.
learned how to walk by just visually and seeing people. We learned how to communicate all before we read any book or even sat in any classroom. So our brain is super powerful when it comes to learning new things and studying new things. And I think when we stop learning, that's when we start going downhill. That's when we start getting bitter. That's when
Yeah.
we start getting angry. That's
Yeah.
when we start thinking we know it all. That's when we start doing that. And that's when the quality of life just starts going down because we feel like we've reached the pinnacle where we don't want to learn anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so I want to be like 90 years old and teaching me how to Dougie or whatever it is,
Yeah.
what the new kids do. I want to stay
Yeah.
youthful. I want to be a sponge. I constantly want to be soaking up knowledge on that. And so that's kind of one of the paths that kind of led me to that. And so I got to thank my pastors on that because it was him that gave me the guidance to start like exposing myself to things outside of my circle on that too.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We got about 5 minutes, but I do want to give you a compliment, Dominic. Um, when I started to, and this is so biblical for me, by the way. Before I actually talk with you, the way your wife carried herself told me a lot about you and you all's marriage. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because I was asking her, because I was, we our job is
Yeah,
fast paced.
yeah,
And I was
absolutely.
asking her, I think one day I asked her, I was like, oh, will he be available this day, this day, this day? And her response to me was, well, you need to reach out and ask him. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And then I came back again and she was like, well, you need to reach out and ask him, you know. And I didn't realize at the time that it was just me, just like, because most people be like, oh yeah, yeah, he's free at this time. Oh, da 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 da. What she said was she said, yeah, I think he would be interested in, but you need to talk with him.
Yeah,
And that lets me, I'm telling you, you don't even know that stuck out to, and I actually told your wife this too. I said, you know what? I told her something to the extent, I said, you know what? I have a lot of respect for you because you never something to this extent. I said, because you never spoke for your husband. You,
hmm,
in other words, you're leading me back to him. And I told her, I think I said something like that tells me a lot about, y'all marriage, or it tells you a lot. Like it was very meaningful to me because I am a man of God. I know I'm not married, I don't have any kids, but I know enough biblical truth to know how things should be and how
right,
things should not be. But that
right,
lets me know when she kept like, okay, we need to reach out to him, need to reach out to him. That lets me know that I'm like, Lord, okay, you have some type of this is literally what I was telling God. You have some type of structure in this marriage because most people it would have been a different story. And so
right,
you talking and you sharing with me lets me know why, like why that conversation like it was, because she was not speaking. She was like, "Well, here's something you need to talk with him." Even one day I was trying to do it on Sunday. Now she did let me know. Well, she did let me. She said, "Well, we do go to church, but you need to talk with him."
hmm,
Because I
yeah,
can't speak for him. So I love this, man. I love everything about you shared. I love, your relationship with the Lord. I love that you are a man of God. I love the fact that you are a good husband to your wife. I love the fact that you're supporting your kids. Like just the whole 9 yards speaks positivity to me in both natural and in a physical sense. So before we go, is there anything that you may want to share with anyone who may be struggling with a mental health diagnosis, who's afraid to, get help? Or would you like to share or giving advice to someone who may be parents to somebody who may have mental health diagnosis, but they just don't know how quite to help them because they're afraid what other people may think?
yeah. And that's a great question. I would say, once you're, made aware of that, the thing I could not stress about is make it aware, but also too, like bring it to attention, but just know that this is a support for all of us
Yeah,
to support that loved one with, but also to know your boundaries too. Because
yeah,
I think a lot of times too, um, we're willing to support, but up to a certain way. But a lot of times we don't realize that we're enabling, because of the fear of what others may think on that. And so we had to have boundaries on that. We had to have things like, that would um, not only support their mental health, but also to preserve our
very powerful.
integrity, our love, for one another. Because if somebody's drowning, you can't just jump out and go try to save them because they'll take you down with you. So you have to
Wow.
structure yourself, get a boat, structure yourself, pull them in, and things like that. Support yourself first before you go like that. And then same thing with the flight mask. They always say put your mask on before you put others on and stuff like that. So knowing those boundaries on that and understanding that. And then also too, like, you know, when you have a loved one that suffers with mental illness or that can be challenging, Like, let's speak about it. Let's talk about this. Let's get help on that. Let's be aware of that, but also too, let's talk about it too, because the more we talk about it, the less it has power, in our home. Like, our kids are not embarrassed to talk about, their mental illness, because it's not their identity.
Right.
It's someone that it's yes, it was something that they went through, but they are overcomers of that. They walk in strength every day. They've been anointed. They walk in
Right.
power. And
Right.
they know that it's a choice. Everything that they do is a choice for them. And so we can talk about it. Even our daughter's like, man, I'm thinking about career changing, and I want to be a peer advocate to other youthful kids who are going through mental illness, because high school was rough for me. And I'm like, man, I mean, brought me almost to tears, because I know, like, her struggle on that.
Yeah.
So and on that. So to see that she's not letting it, like, uh drag her down, but she wants to use it as a weapon to serve others, and as a tool to serve others, I think that's inspiring too. So, but I think it stems from us talking about it. We were like, nope, we're not going to give this power. We're going to change everything about that. And if
Right.
your family or your loved ones or your kids, start looking at what you're doing. If you love your kids enough, start making changes. Like, I took a drastic pay cut
Yeah.
because I knew what was important to me, and it wasn't the money.
Yeah.
We made good money, and they still struggled on that. And so,
Right.
you know, the way kids the way kids um, spell love is time,
Yeah.
time, quality time. Being present. On that, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not present, it makes a huge impact in their life. So
Mhm.
you have to model that for them. So I would just show that, and just show love on that, and understanding on that. So that's all I have for one another. But yeah, thank you so much, Jesse, for allowing me to be on the show today.
Oh, you are so welcome, man, brother. And thank you so much for sharing the information that you share, because I'm telling you now, this is definitely, in my opinion, by far one of the better shows that I did. And I will be reaching out to you again to do another show
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
Because you are definitely like a wealth of knowledge. You have a lot of good information to share. And I think as people tune in to listen to what we're doing on this show, I think the information that you shared is going to be very informative for them. So I'm going to be reaching out to you again very soon to do another show for sure.
Awesome.
And thank your wife too for making a connection. I really appreciate her just really, being patient with me as I kept asking for your number. So
Oh, no,
thank you, brother.
absolutely. You're a busy man. You were in and out. Every time I came in, you were gone somewhere doing something else. I mean, you're a man that wears many hats.
Yes, definitely wear many hats. And I love to be busy too. I'm a go-getter by nature. I can't just, I gotta do it. Yeah. So yeah, that's me. That's me. But yeah, I'm
Awesome.
gonna reach out to you very soon, man. And we're gonna put something else together, okay?
All right, sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And
All
that's
right.
it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you like this particular show, if you would like a DVD copy of our show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.